Welcome to Conlang Critic, the show that gets facts wrong about your favorite conlang. I'm Misali, and in this episode, we'll be looking at the language that... it's not that it's hard to pronounce the name, it's more that it's hard to say its name out loud in a way that makes it clear what language you're talking about. English. It's not English, E-N-G-L-I-S-H, it's English, spelled I-Q-G-L-I-C. We're just gonna have to deal with that. Now, if you've seen some other episodes of Conlang Critic, you might have heard of English before. That's English, not English. Even if you haven't, you still might have heard of tgil. Tgil was one of the first languages I reviewed in this series. At the time, it was a bit exciting because it was a first in a few ways. I dunked on tgil pretty hard in that review, and it held the title of my least favorite conlang until the Polyespo episode from earlier this year. Tgil is an amateur international auxiliary language created by Jack Eisenmann in 2012. In short, it's a language where every word is 3 letters long and borrowed from English. And actually, in this case, the distinction between the two languages with names that are pronounced like English isn't as important, because tgil, in addition to being based on English the natural language, was more directly based on Jack Eisenmann's earlier project, Iqglic. Man, there's really no good way to disambiguate these. I asked Jack Eisenmann if there's a way to differentiate between them, and he said, quote, "No. So, officially, you just don't." Oh, by the way, he wanted me to make it clear that he doesn't actually still care about this language. He abandoned English almost a full decade ago, and hasn't spent any time at all on it since. Okay, right. English is an international auxiliary language created by Jack Eisenmann in 2011. While English 2011 appears to be a modified version of English 1550 to present, it's more accurate to describe it as a completely new language built from the ground up that just happens to be based on English. The distinction doesn't matter that much, but the amount it matters isn't none. English's consonants are m, n, ng, p, t, ch, k, b, d, j, g, f, th, s, sh, h, v, th, z, j, w, r, y, l. This is literally just the English consonant inventory. I guess the marginal phonemes aren't here, but there's not much I can really say about this inventory from a design standpoint. Sure, I could do my normal thing, maybe even bring back that game show segment and talk about individual phonemes that make this less suited for an IAL, but it's not like each of these consonants was selected individually. This inventory is the way it is because of exactly one bad decision, the decision to just copy English, and that was a bad idea. Don't do that. The point of an IAL is to be a culturally neutral language that anyone can learn, and deliberately copying one specific natural language without adjusting it in any way is the opposite of that. Oh, I guess I should also talk about how my analysis here is technically different from the way it's described in the official documentation. So, a lot of these things aren't supposed to be consonant phonemes. The affricates are presented as stop fricative consonant clusters, and the semivowels are presented as non-syllabic allophones of their corresponding full vowels. So, I could reduce this chart to just this instead, but I don't think this is really the best way to analyze it. Anyway, English's vowels are I, U, E, O, A. English phonology isn't defined using the International Phonetic Alphabet, so I made some interpretations. I talked about this in the tgil review too, but the way it's described, just using examples of English words the vowels appear in without specifying which pronunciation, would mean that if I wanted to interpret the English documentation completely literally, the vowel inventory could look something like this instead. But that's not really fair, right? Of course this stuff isn't supposed to be referring to the way I pronounce these words in particular. It's supposed to work for everyone, right? So really I should analyze them like this, using a broad diaphonemic analysis of English. So however you pronounce the vowel in but, that's how that vowel is pronounced. But the thing is, I don't think that's really what was intended either. Jack Eisenmann speaks a dialect of Iqglic with a cot-caught merger, and Iqglic appears to have been designed without taking into consideration that there exist dialects without the merger. I guess I should explain what I mean. So here's 8 lexical sets in English. The general American dialect of English groups them like this, into 5 different vowel phonemes. Other dialects, like received pronunciation, have completely different groupings for these vowels. As you can see here, in RP, bath, start, and father are all the same vowel phoneme, but in GA, they're 3 separate vowels. Anyway, the cot-caught merger takes the father, lot, cloth, and thought lexical sets and pronounces all of them as one thing, merging them, if you will. Now, the fact that English 2011 incorporates the cot-caught merger isn't itself a bad thing. I've said it many times before. When learning a new language, it's a lot easier to adjust to a smaller phonemic inventory than to a larger one. The problem is that the way it's implemented is pretty careless. The word used to define the pronunciation of this vowel is bought, which is a thought lexical set word. So someone looking at this word could pronounce it like store, using their pronunciation of the thought vowel, and then assume that it's the word for store, even though it's actually supposed to be star. This is really just one piece of a much larger problem. English was very clearly designed with one specific dialect of English in mind. The vocabulary phonemicizes things like intervocalic tapping and TR affrication, things that are definitely not universal among English speakers. English has another problem that we've seen before many times. Its phonotactics are left undefined. There's no set limit to what sequences of phonemes can form valid words. Now, you'd think that since all words in English are from English, that this wouldn't be that much of a problem, and yet it really is. Probably the biggest issue this causes is when dealing with syllabicity. The letters Y and W are ambiguous as to when they're pronounced as non-syllabic semivowels and when they're pronounced as syllabic full vowels. If the official documentation is to be trusted, then every letter is pronounced one way, so they're always syllabic, meaning that this is a 4-syllable word pronounced pauruik. This leads to an interesting question. What is the true nature of this conlang? Is the true version the way it's described by the reference grammar, or is it what was intended by its creator? Are the mistakes in the official documentation truly part of the language? Is the word for bush really pronounced boos? There's 5 words in English that contain that specific consonant cluster, according to the official documentation. This is clearly a mistake. All of these were intended to have sh instead, but how much does authorial intent actually matter? When dealing with language, it's the speakers who decide what a language truly is, but this conlang doesn't have speakers, so there's no definitive answer. If you've seen the title of my video about spelling reforms, you'll know that I think most English spelling reforms are bad, and that's because most of them are like English 2011. It really is a textbook bad spelling reform. It's super unintuitive, and I really don't like the way it looks. It does that thing where TC is used for ch. I hate that. I understand the reasoning behind it, but it does not look good. Okay, here's a fun game we can play. This is all words in the language that end with the letter U. Just look through them and try to read them to yourself. Don't think about it too hard, just get a sense of how you instinctively think these words are pronounced. Now, my guess is that most of you doing that will have made the same mistake. That is, the first time you see one of these words, you assume that the letter U at the end is pronounced like oo. It's not. The letter U in English is pronounced like in all contexts. This is what I mean by calling this orthography unintuitive. It directly contradicts most people's intuition. That actually seems to include Jack Eisenmann himself, funnily enough. There's 5 words in English that end with the letter A, all of which are from English words that end with schwa. Like, Jack already got it. It makes more intuitive sense for words that end with to be spelled with A instead, but since that contradicts the every letter is pronounced exactly one way thing, it's gotta be U instead. But also, is every letter pronounced exactly one way? This is that same point I was making before. Is English the language that Jack Eisenmann described, or is it the language he meant to describe? English has another writing system, and there's no real description of how it works anywhere. Basically, there's different letter shapes for all the consonants, and what color it is indicates what vowel comes after it. You can also put one consonant above another, which makes it so the vowel goes before the consonant instead. It's a somewhat interesting idea, and it absolutely does not fit English phonology, and it definitely has no place in an international auxiliary language. Also, since there's 8 phonemic vowels, the colors you have to distinguish aren't nearly distinct enough, especially if you're colorblind. Grammar is the main thing that separates English from English. You know, besides the aesthetics. If you're familiar with Jack Eisenmann's later works, English is a lot like those. There's 4 strictly separate parts of speech: nouns, verbs, descriptors, and prepositions. Unlike Jack's later conlangs, descriptors are only adjectives and adverbs, and not intransitive verbs. Though it does say that all verbs are transitive, which is, obviously wrong given the verb exist. Another fun difference between English and Jack's later conlangs is that English actually has a fully functional set of third-person pronouns. I mean, sure, they're directly copied from English, but it's better than literally nothing. Of course, it's completely fine for a language to not use third-person pronouns. The problem with tgil is that it didn't clarify what you're supposed to use instead of third-person pronouns. Anyway, English grammar is pretty simple. What you're looking at now is the whole thing. Some basic rules about noun phrases, a handful of suffixes, and something about situation nouns. Again, it's a lot like Jack Eisenmann's other languages. Situation nouns are supposed to be relative clauses. You put quote marks around a verb phrase, and now it functions as a noun. How are you supposed to pronounce them? No idea. Situation nouns are a staple of Eisenmann conlangs, and the way they're implemented in English is absolutely the worst version. This is definitely something that should have been handled with grammatical particles, not punctuation. What else? Oh, I should talk about correlatives. Jack uses correlative the way Esperantists use the term, as a catch-all for interrogative, demonstrative, and quantifier pronouns. These so-called correlatives are supposed to be a regularized version of their English counterparts. So if you look at all these in English, you'll probably notice a few clear patterns. There's pairs like what, that, when, then, and where, there, and there's the whole set of words everybody, anybody, somebody, nobody, everything, anything, something, nothing, and so on. So you could just try to take those patterns and force them to work for absolutely everything. It's incredibly silly, and I think it's my favorite thing English does. It's just as unapologetically artificial as the rest of the language, but at the same time it has this weird charm to it. It's like Jack was trying to be as objective and logical as possible when designing it, and he happened to logically conclude that something this ridiculous was the correct way to do this. Unsurprisingly, English vocabulary is completely derived from English. It's small but not minimal at around 2,000 words. It's not enough words for you to be able to assume that any given English word definitely has an English equivalent, but it's too many words for it to feel right rephrasing things to get around the holes in the vocabulary. Like, if you want to say moose or beaver, you're fine, but there's no words for deer or raccoon. I think most emblematic of the fundamental conceptual problem with English as an international auxiliary language is the fact that there's words for American imperial units, but not for international metric units. This is an international auxiliary language that makes absolutely no effort to be culturally neutral in any capacity. It's careless at best. You might have noticed that those words for inch and foot are both prefixed with length. This is part of another of the baffling decisions English makes. See, English avoids having words with multiple meanings, whether they're from homophones or different senses of the same original English word. And the way English avoids this is by just picking one meaning as the default and sticking another word before the other one to disambiguate it. So that's why there's stuff like period and dote period, to and count to, or censor and bad censor. It's another clear example of the problem with the design philosophy behind English. Jack came up with some general principles that maybe sounded good on paper, then fully committed to them without considering if the results of those principles actually are good. The following is a part of a translation of the Tower of Babel from Genesis, translated into English by Jack Eisenmann specifically for this video. The entire earth was have one language and common words. The persons was found of field in the land of Shinar, Jering. They was travel from the east land. They was say, please come, we please make bricks and entire burn they to self. They was have brick for rock and tar for cement. They then say, please come, we please build a city for self, and we a tower have top in the sky. We please make name for self, for not is spreaded over the face of the entire earth. All in all, English is a comprehensive failure. I would call it poorly designed, but calling it designed is an exaggeration. English was abandoned in favor of what would later become tgil, and looking at English, it's clear that most of the stuff that's bad about tgil started here. This is the third of Jack Eisenmann's languages I reviewed, and they're really all the same thing. tgil, Zese, they're just incremental changes to a fundamentally flawed starting point. But really, the problem isn't in the core of the language, it's with its presentation. The Jack Eisenmann conlang does not work at all as an international auxiliary language, but it doesn't have to be one. A language with a smallish core vocabulary and minimal programming language like grammar is a pretty decent foundation for an engineered language, as long as there's no pretense of it being designed for international communication. English wasn't the most requested Jack Eisenmann language for me to review. I mean, you saw how many requests it has. That's way less than everything else this season. The most requested one was PHONOLOGY, Jack's first conlang. PHONOLOgy isn't an auxlang, it's a personal language, and it has all the hallmarks of his other languages. And I could have made a video about PHONOLOgy, and it would literally just be the Zese episode again, but less funny. And that's the thing, right? Because the Zese episode was just a less funny version of the tgil episode. That's why I decided to review English, because at least it's different in interesting ways. I don't want to keep reviewing Jack Eisenmann's languages. One half of it is because they're all the same, so I have fewer interesting things to say every time, and the other half is because I don't want to be mean to the guy. It was one thing when this was a smaller channel and I didn't care about things like quality, but it's another thing entirely now that I have an actual platform and standards. That in mind, English is complete garbage. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the Conlang Critic Season 3 finale, where I'll be reviewing Quenya. Hey, so you're watching past the outro, so I think I can be real with you for a second. Pretty much since I uploaded the Viosa episode, a small but vocal group of people have been complaining about how I'm not making Conlang Critic as often as I used to. I wouldn't really mind it if it was, accurate. Hey, I've been making Conlang Critic at a steady pace of once every other month for a whole year now. Literally, what are you talking about? I make this show every other month, and I make other stuff between. Nothing has changed. Anyway, I've got an announcement video coming up about what stuff I'll be doing after Season 3 is over, so look forward to that.